Good evening, Beacon fans, and welcome to James Cotter Field on a cool, overcast, and drizzly evening here in Boston, Massachusetts. It's not necessarily the most pleasant weather for watching a lacrosse game, though it is for the players out on the field. These are great conditions to play sports in, not too hot. The drizzle will naturally cool you down as you play, and we've got a Little East Conference matchup for you, the final LEC game of the regular season for your number one team in the conference, your UMass Boston Beacons, as they play host to the visiting Castleton University Spartans on this Tuesday evening. Mason Stalf welcoming you in here to the Little East Conference Network and the Beacon Broadcast Network on this Tuesday night. A little bit of a late start, 7:30, so not a huge crowd, but for those of you joining us from home in much warmer and less drizzly confines, welcome to the BBN. As we get you ready for this one, the team's going to be announced momentarily. We take a look at some stats for these two squads. It's been a lopsided matchup in recent years. The Beacons winning their last time out against Castleton 30-6. As we take a look, and you can see it's pretty lopsided right now. But right now you look and you can just kind of see that these two teams not necessarily on the same plane, at least thus far into the season. The Beacons 13-2, 7-0 in conference. Castleton just 2-12, 2-4 in the Little East Conference. However, Castleton's coming off of probably their two best games of the season. They beat Southern Maine in their last time out 12-10, and the previous game they held a decent lead going into that second half against their previous opponent. And that time, I'm sorry, that was against Plymouth State. They led that one 7-4 and then gave up 6 in a row at the conclusion of the game. But we'll take you through the players to watch and the starting lineups as the teams take to the field at the conclusion of the national anthem. Your starting lineups for UMass Boston. They will start number 21, Trevor Copy in goal. Defensive 3 of Chris Palin, number 1, Patrick Carey, number 15, and Patrick Colburn, number 17. In the midfield, you'll have number 26, Justin McCullough, number 23, Jacob Banks, and then taking all of the face-offs for the most part will be number 44, Jack Dobrazinski. Dara Fahey will likely come off the bench to replace him once the face-off is over. And then in the front line, it'll be Gavin Admirand, number 20, Michael Claflin, and number 5, Luke Murphy, who will probably drop back into the midfield with Fahey coming off the bench, and then you'll have the midfield 3 and the attacking 3 for the most part. Meanwhile, for Castleton, in their net, you have number 21, Chris Wilk. In front of him, a back 3 of Luke Issa, number 31, Liam Lovering, and number 37, Cam Strickland. Midfield 3 on the left side, Ty Bowen. Number 2, Casey Meswar. And taking their face-offs in the center circle will be number 17, Finn Miller, likely to be replaced by number 16, Hunter Sorrow, once the face-off is over, as we are underway, and the opening looks both denied gorgeously in there defensively. Great stops, Trevor Copy with the double save, and then comes up with it. Castleton winning the opening face-off and going right into the attack. That's something that should make them happy, led by Coach Bo McDougall in his 10th season against Tyler Lowe in his 12th, trying to back up his Little East Conference championship from a year ago. UMass Boston with their opening attack. We do finish that starting lineup for Castleton. In the attack, Griffin Weller, number 8, number 22, Dawson Nallette, and number 12, Chris Labont. Shot comes in, and the opening score will go the way of the Beaks and Luke Murphy from up high. Banks in there, but it's going to go, or Murphy in there, and it's going to go to Jacob Banks for the opening shot. Tough to see. Things are fogging up a little bit in the press box. The cold conditions, the wet conditions, not necessarily making visibility as great as we would like, but we play through them, and the Beacons picking up where they have left off throughout this season, just motoring through, coming off of a convincing 22-6 victory against the Warriors of Eastern Connecticut, a game that they led 11-1 early. Eastern Connecticut would score a couple goals at the start of the second half, but then would be right back under fire as the Beacons just ran away with that one by the end. Then, of course, the game before that was one that we really were looking forward to, a rematch of the Little East Conference Championship from a year ago against WestCon, but WestCon really couldn't compete with UMass Boston in that game. It ended up being a 23-14 scoreline here at James Cotter. Of course, that game followed up the humongous, monumental victory against Keene State. Another score for your Beacons early. Another shot coming in from the top. And this time it's going to be Luke Murphy, who I gave credit for the last goal, and he repays me by scoring the second one. Castleton is going to be down a significant number of players today. Reported to be illness, but not COVID, but still affecting the team and resulting in a much smaller roster than they would otherwise have. This is a Castleton team that struggled for much of this season. But mentioned they are coming off of that 12-10 win against Southern Maine, their first conference win of the season. And through three quarters, they were holding off Plymouth State. They were getting mightily outshot, but led it 7-4 at one point. But then the last 6 goals would go the way of the Panthers, and Castleton would unfortunately fall on their home field. Right now, Castleton currently sitting in 7th. And of course, even though it has been a struggle this season, they do have an opportunity, if they can, to pull off a shocker tonight. Looks unlikely, but they have an opportunity depending on what happens elsewhere. They're currently tied with Plymouth State at 2-4, though of course the Panthers, courtesy of that victory, do have the tiebreaker over the Spartans now, again in head-to-head record. Just a half game back in the win column behind Eastern Connecticut State, who got blown out by UMass Boston on their senior day. Possessing the ball up top is Ethan Esposito, number 32 in green. Spartans in all green today, trimmed in white with the Beacons in their usual home whites with a little bit of blue. Possessing up top, dancing around, trying to create some space is Hunter Sorrow, one of their leading scorers. Sorrow on the season, 18 goals and 5 assists. Chris Labont's their leading scorer with 27. And is the only 20-plus goal scorer on this team. Meanwhile, the Beacons just seem to score at will, and we've already seen them score twice from Murphy and Banks. 28 seconds remain on the shot clock. This one escapes behind, but closest to it following up the play are the Spartans. Fans coming in here in limited supply tonight. Weeknight game, of course, but the late 7:30 start not necessarily making things conducive, and the weather not helping either. 18 seconds to shoot is being pulverized up top is number 11, Colin Johnson. Tries to get inside, but it's blocked on its way through, and the Beacons are coming away with it as Murphy causes the turnover and then sends it forward into the quarter field. Beacons darting forward, trying to go high, but it's glove saved, or stick saved, I should say. Back in behind by Wilk, the goalie. Chris Wilk, one of 4 goalkeepers that Castleton has used on the season. Wilk, in his 13th game, leads all Castleton goalies by a wide margin at over 600 minutes. 162 goals allowed, 161 saves made, so for every goal he allows, he usually saves one. But he's putting right back under pressure as the Beacons look to extend this to 3-0. Admirand hit the 50-goal plateau with his final score against Eastern Connecticut, and is certainly a valid candidate not only for goal scorer of the year, as this one whipped in from up high and an outstanding shot. It was Banks again. Saw the 3, couldn't tell if it was 23 or 33, but Banks certainly would have been the good prediction as he scores his second, the sophomore from Westminster. Goals number 27 and 28 on the year for Jacob. Gavin Admirand leads the way with 50 to go along with 27 assists. Michael Claflin, the team's leading helper, 34 assists to go along with 42 goals entering the game. 76 points for Claflin, just one behind Admirand's 77. Then Fahey at 55 with 32 goals and 23 assists. Donovan Przinski, 34 points, and then Banks at 28 as the attacking options just come at you in droves for UMass Boston. One of the reasons that they are the team to beat, still remaining unbeaten in conference play, and things don't look to be changing. Just 5 minutes into this one, already 3 goals from Banks with 2 and Luke Murphy with 1. That one shot from up high, went in back, and is backed up by the Spartans. Already undermanned, even with their full team against this Beacon squad, and with basically 2/3 of their team able to play today, this is going to be a mighty chore for them. But they have plenty to play for, as we mentioned, so don't just chalk this one up as a victory yet. Spartans will certainly try and compete as best they can with who they have. Cam Frankenhoff up top, the 5'10 sophomore from Essex Junction, Vermont. Another beautiful save, picked up on the ground ball and sprayed to the right side. Well, despite already locking up the number 1 seed in the conference tournament, you cannot say that Trevor Coppy is not going out there and trying to pitch himself a shutout in this first quarter, as he is sprawled to make a couple of body saves. Hunter Sorrow looking. Being put under pressure by the Beacon defense. Helping out was Murphy coming in from the midfield. Spartans again cut off as they try and send it behind. Nearly throw it away. Now who can pick up the ground ball? 2 Beacons are there, along with 1 Spartan. It will stay with Sparty. Tough to see in these raining conditions. It's the yellow line that splits the football end zone. Women's lacrosse would use the full size of the football field. No women's lacrosse at UMass Boston. But the men's game plays the gold lines that surround the pitch, at least on the baseline, and then it's the blue lines here on the near side where you see the end zone marker marking midfield. Men's game just a little bit smaller in field dimensions, less players on the field, but obviously a heck of a lot more body contact, which is not permitted in the women's game. Just approaching the midpoint of the opening quarter. Beacons 3, Spartans nothing. Beacons will wrap up their regular season with a non-conference game here, as that one knocked out of the stick, and beautiful caused turnover that time by Chris Palin behind the play. Palin, 5'10", from just south of the city in West Bridgewater, maybe about 25-30 minutes or so southwest of where we are now, which is just south of downtown. Gorgeous skyline for the most part, though tonight the weather kind of putting a damper on things a little bit. Castleton does force the turnover right back as that ball approached the 30-yard line on this BC High football field. But just as Castleton retakes possession, they turn it right back over to Elijah Beasley. Another shot from up high. And another score. This time it is Claflin. Beacons have shown a propensity to shoot from distance, not necessarily waiting to try and penetrate in deep inside the crease area, just letting fly, and that's the hardest part about being a lacrosse defender. It's so difficult. You got to cut down all the angles. You need to know where the goal is at any given time, and you definitely do not want to let the Beacons just rile up and launch one like Dobrzinski does there. Just gets in right around that 20 and just lets rip. And anything and anyone in the way better take cover. Dobbs, the face-off man from West Greenwich, Rhode Island. Transfer from the Catholic University of America, taking his graduate year with UMass Boston, and he has been strong in the face-off circle, trying to win a Little East Conference title. That shot comes in side-armed from up top. Shot attempt from Claflin looking for his second goal in as many shots, but missed that one. the senior from Newton. Backing up the play was the goalie, and so taking it back into his possession is Wilk. Chris Wilk from Rutland, Vermont, which is where Castleton is located, throws it away. Castleton does pick it up, though, and now an opportunity to potentially break in the other direction. First 4 goals have gone the way of the Beacons, despite already wrapping up the number 1 seed. Castleton wants a timeout. We can forecast for you what's coming up for the Beacons. We also want to take a look, if we can, at the player to watch today. Now, there's a lot of players that we could potentially watch today for UMass Boston. I'm not sure how long the elite players on this Beacons roster will end up playing, depending on what the scoreline looks like. But Justin McCullough, our guy to watch. Focus on the defense. Yes, the offensive players get a lot of the focus, but McCullough in his 15 games, those 17 caused turnovers, 28 ground balls on the season. Always love to look at what I call the dirty numbers, which are the Lacrosse defenders' numbers. How many times do you pick up the ground ball, which are usually those 50-50 opportunities that you basically turn into something that's anything but a 50-50 ball? What are the caused turnovers? How many times do you yourself turn the ball over? And, of course, in the women's game, you have the draw controls. Men's game, you have the face-off. So you don't have that dirty number. But still, when you're a defender and you don't necessarily get a ton of attention, especially in a game that looks to be fairly high-scoring and offensive-minded for UMass Boston, it's always important to focus on those defenders. And McCullough, one of a number of outstanding defenders. Just as the Beacons can pressure you and thwart you offensively, their defense is strong. McCullough, originally from just down the road in Waltham, has really been strong. One of the younger members. Talk about all the different veteran members of this team. Palin, a senior. Admirand, a senior. Carey, a junior. Colburn, a junior. Claflin, a senior. Dobbs, a graduate student. McCullough is the lone sophomore starter, so he is certainly playing above his year with this veteran-led team that is looking to go back-to-back in the Little East Conference. After the timeout, Castleton looking for their first goal. Getting thwarted off there was Griffin Weller, the true freshman, for the Spartans. Now it's in the stick of Labonte. He's their leading scorer. Only player with more than 20. He's got 27 scores on the season, but it's turned over, and now the Beacons look to come on the other way. This one overshot a little bit. They should pick up the ground ball, but nearly running over the top of it. And now the left-handed shot from distance. Might have been a feed, couldn't tell, as Jacob Banks just flung it goalwards. And now getting forced away is Murphy. Into the middle. A little bit sloppy. Who can take it down and then trying to slam it into the ground, but no such luck there. This has the makings of what could be a sloppy game. Not just the conditions in the late night, but of course Castleton not necessarily considered the cream of the crop in the Little East Conference, so the Beacons, if they're not necessarily 100% focused, now we've already seen their goalie certainly putting his body on the line, but we've already seen the Beacons, anytime they get a look at it, they're letting rip right here. And 4-0, you're certainly comfortable. Castleton not even on the board yet. But this is not the most clinical offense that you may see the Beacons run. Certainly very different than we saw against WestCon and against Keene State, where they had to be absolutely clinical with their approach. Another goal. I think that's going to be Claflin's second. Loves that right side. We saw Dara Fahey. He loves those spots too. Try and get to the outside, get a step on the defender. And Castleton unable to keep him from getting in the space. Lacrosse is a game that very much is dependent on that first step. There's a lot of times that slow build-up, certainly plenty of body contact as well, but really on the outsides, it's involved in taking on your man and seeing if you can get the step on him, almost lulling him to sleep, and then seeing if you can blow past him with that crucial first step. And if you can get with him on your back shoulder, all he can do is foul or let you get in and score. And that was a really nice job by Claflin from Newton. 5-0 UMass Boston, 10.5 gone in the opening quarter, and they have already put their foot on the gas pedal and are making things very difficult for Castleton. 6th goal into the back of the net. Mentioned Dara Fahey just a moment ago, and that is he who scores the Beacons' next one. And you can already see the Beacons know that this could be an outstanding scoreline in their favor, but really not slamming the sticks down. They'll celebrate, they'll go back, give everybody high fives, but Castleton undermanned tonight and certainly a little bit under-talented as Dobbs wins another face-off. Here he comes, launching himself forward, trying to bounce one in there. Now everybody scrums around the ball. Who can pick it up? It escapes, and Dobbs is there to pick it up, but I think it's going to be Castleton ball. No, it'll stay with the Beacons, but Dobrzinski heads back to the bench. Subs come in on the fly. And now launching himself into the fray is Banks, already looking for the hat trick. This one escapes to the far side. Whistle sounds as the Beacons will take it back into possession once again. 50 seconds on the shot clock. Another shot from distance. Another goal. This time it will be Chad Kidd who scores. Haven't said Kidd's name a lot recently, but comes out there and once again, not a lot of necessarily ball movement around the cage. It's just moving it into the spaces. Castleton is not cutting down the angles, and this time it's Kidd, the senior from Natick, who's able to score. For Kidd, that is his 7th goal of the season, to go along with 4 helpers. Another face-off win. This is one of the things, if you watch any Castleton games on tape, they're certainly not as quick or as skilled as a lot of the teams that they face, but what really has hurt them a lot this season is that they can't win face-offs regularly. And it doesn't matter what team you are, if you can't win the face-off, you basically rely on your defense to get stops, which in the game of lacrosse happens maybe half the time. If you're a good team, it happens half the time. If you're not, it's certainly less. And if you can't win face-offs, it allows teams to just sustain runs. And that's why in that Plymouth State game 2 games ago, when they led it 7-4, for the remainder of the game until the final couple of minutes, Castleton didn't get the ball back for what felt like a quarter and a half. Because Plymouth State just kept control of the ball. And every time they scored, they'd get it back again. And Castleton could never get themselves back into the game. A little bit different against Southern Maine. Southern Maine currently bottom of the conference, 0-6 in Little East Conference play. So Castleton was able to be much better in that one. But even in the face-offs, it was Southern Maine 20-5 over Castleton. Southern Maine just couldn't score enough goals, though they did try and rally back late, outscoring the Spartans 7-2 in the 4th quarter. But if you can't win face-offs, and you don't have to win 3/4 of the face-offs, you don't even need to win half, but they're basically in a 3-1 right now in face-offs going back the last few games, and that's not a recipe for continued success or any success at all for that matter. Final 2 minutes and 20 seconds. The Beacons have scored the first 7 goals. And I don't want to necessarily sound like too much of a downer on Castleton, and just being able to come out here missing basically a dozen players due to the illness that's currently ravaging their program. And again, it's not COVID. I will specify that out front. I've already talked through it with the individuals, and unless they were not telling the truth, which I certainly don't expect them to be, then it's not COVID, but it is still something that is keeping Castleton from being at full strength. And they do have a couple of guys that, if they had them tonight, would really be helpful. One of them is Sean Kimura, number 15, leads his team with 19 assists. And we talk about all the goal scorers, but it's the guy that usually sets up the goal scorer that does a lot of the heavy lifting, and that's Kimura's job for Castleton. With his 19 assists, also helps with a lot of leadership things as well. He's a junior from Montreal, Quebec. But no Kimura tonight. and that means that somebody else is going to have to find the pass. And when you're getting hounded like that from UMass Boston, so incredibly difficult. It's going to be a foul against the Beacons, final 70 seconds of the opening quarter. So far, 2 goals apiece from Claflin and Banks. Kidd and Murphy also scoring. It's a 7-0 Beacon lead as we get into the closing stages. Castleton's had 2 really good looks. In their opening possession, basically within 15 seconds, they had a double-time opportunity. Both were thwarted in the net by Copy. And then they had one similarly about 5-6 minutes later where, again, Copy sprawling to make the body save, which is definitely not comfortable. There is padding under that goalie shirt, but it is not nearly as much as you would think it is. You take one to the body, it is not comfortable. 34 seconds as Castleton tries to go near side, but that one sprayed well wide by Luke Issa, another Vermont native. Castleton with plenty of players from their home state of Vermont, as well as a bunch from Connecticut, New Hampshire, and even a couple from Massachusetts. Final 22 seconds, the Beacons trying to shut out the Spartans through the first quarter. Longest sustained possession for Castleton, 28 seconds to shoot, but the game clock will run out first. Colin Johnson darts inside, and it's stopped by the Beacon netminder. Another save for Copy, flips it up high, and that will do it for the end of the first 15 minutes. So came in expecting UMass Boston to put their foot down and assert their dominance early, and they have done so. They score the first 7 goals of the game. Castleton still looking for their opening score. And after the first 15 minutes, it's the Beacon 7 and the Spartans nothing on the Beacon Broadcast Network. Mason Stalf with you on this cool Tuesday night. Still drizzling outside. You see the umbrellas down below us off to the left. Castleton not necessarily sending a huge delegate down from Vermont. It would certainly be a late trip to get back, to drive from here to Castleton. But still, for those Castleton faithful that are joining us on the broadcast, welcome to you as well. We saw some opportunities, but then again, it's been tough going, as it has been for most teams this season against UMass Boston. Even WestCon, who we really thought would be able to give the Beacons a game when those two teams met this past weekend, it really looked like, or I should say a week ago here at James Cotter, we really thought that WestCon and UMass Boston were going to have a tight game, similar to what we saw against Keene State the game before, and that's just not what happened. Western Connecticut could not score with UMass Boston. Beacons putting up 23 on WestCon, and really after their win against the Owls the game before, saying not only was last year not a fluke, but we are the team to beat to follow it up for a second straight year and advance to the NCAA tournament. We will take you around the Little East Conference. We have one game that's gone final. We'll get you the final score in a 2-versus-3 battle between Keene State and WestCon. That game was being played at 4 o'clock down in Danbury. And then Plymouth State and Southern Maine will be in the second half there, up in Gorham. Plymouth State visiting the Huskies, and a game that's also huge for Plymouth State as a win against Southern Maine would give them a critical win as they try and keep themselves in the bottom 5 and 6 places for the Little East Conference tournament. 6 of the 9 teams will qualify. Beacons have already wrapped up the number 1 spot as Dombrzinski forces it away. Who can pick up the ground ball as we switch ends? It is the Beacons once again, and this time it's going to be Matt Palin who gets forward. This shot comes in, caroms itself away, but following up the play will be UMass Boston once again. Then the last game starting at 7 o'clock, Mass Maritime, currently in the 4 spot in the LEC, taking on bottom team Salem State. currently 0-6 and still looking to pick up their first victory. The Castleton Spartans' 2 victories in conference play this season came against Salem State and University of Southern Maine. They absolutely crushed Salem State, 24-16, which was by far the most goals they'd scored this season. Their second highest was their season opener against SUNY Canton when they scored 14 times in a 19-14 loss. This one gets to the outside. Beacons, probably their longest offensive possession of the day as well, as they've really just been trying to get it to the point. Not a ton of movement, taking the man one-on-one, and then trying to gun one from about the 20-yard line or so, sometimes even higher than that. Looking for it, shooting, and making the save. Donovan Brzezinski with the shot. Nice save in the net by Chris Wilk. Castleton trying to get themselves on the board. They're going to have the look here. Tried to slam it over the top, but Copy was alert to it. Spartans are backing up the play, so they will retake possession. Flag, though, dropped behind the play. Our officials tonight, Ron Talmo is the referee, with Brian Lenane the umpire, and Don Phelan is the field judge. First penalty of the day will go against UMass Boston. Penalty is against Patrick McCoy, the left side midfielder from Vernon, Connecticut, and a graduate of East Catholic High School, which just so happens to be my alma mater in Manchester. There's the look. Rip shot from Jonah Gennaro from Essex, Vermont. But he has his shot go wide. And again, Castleton's had those looks. It's clinical finishing that UMass Boston has. They just seem to always be able to pick their spots regardless of where it is in the goal. They're shooting with power, but they're shooting with accuracy as well. And Castleton, when they've had just that one step, has not been able to settle themselves down to finish with accuracy. Great transition look, trying to snipe that one in. Patrick Carey goes behind. Still looking for our first goal of the second quarter, so if Castleton can hang their hats on anything, it's that they've started this second quarter much better defensively. And really after the first few minutes where the Beacons jumped out to that 4-0 lead, Castleton has certainly held their own defensively. The Beacons have gotten 3 more goals, yes, but it's making it much harder. They're having to work for it. They're not just stepping into these shots and letting them rip. Speaking of letting it rip, that one from a tough angle on the outside. Really tough shot, but it goes in regardless, and the Beacons score once again. That shot from Zach Mann, who kind of gets overshadowed sometimes by some of the higher scoring players on the Beacons, but Mann can score as well. That's his 8th. And the more players we name for UMass Boston, just reinforcing the point that everybody on this team can score. And it just makes things so difficult to defend. And certainly in the games we've seen so far this year, it does look like Keene State may be the one team that can play the Beacons close. We thought it would either be WestCon or the Owls, but instead, as a gorgeous pass from behind the net, Chris Palin picking out a streaking Colin Ford, another new goal scorer for UMass Boston today. Ford, another veteran player, a junior from Worcester. And this is just becoming comical on how many different players the Beacons are able to score. And maybe that's something that we can tally up at the end of this game and just see, okay, how many different players can come out on top? Castleton needs to win a face-off, and they do. Taken under control this time by Gennaro. And Castleton is finally on the board. Shot comes in from the right side. See if we can get a number on the goal scorer. I believe that was number 2, Casey Messwar. It's either Messwar or Sorrow. Both can score. Messwar with 15, Sorrow with 18. I think it's going to end up going to the book for Sorrow. And Castleton, it took them the better part of 19 minutes, but they are on the board. But then they lose the ensuing face-off, and that shot bounced just wide to the inside post by Jason McNeely. So far, Murphy with 1, Claflin with 1, Jacob Banks with his hat trick, and then Mann, Kidd, Ford, and Fahey have all scored for UMass Boston. Beacon faithful enjoying the roaring offense that they're seeing. How about that pass? Gorgeous again. And it's Ford for his second. And it was really indicative of how the Beacons are playing right now, that there were 2 players, and the first one thought the pass was intended for him, and all it was a pass just past his stick into the waiting stick of Ford, who scores with relative ease. 10-1 UMass Boston. I mentioned the last time these two teams faced, it was the Beacons winning 30-6. And you wondered, especially with an undermanned Castleton squad as it is, if that scoreline could look similar. And they are really just turning it on and just showing how many different weapons that they have. Seven different goal scorers for their 10 goals. Jacob Banks has the hat trick, everybody else with 1. But they're not done yet either. It is very likely you could still see something from Przinski, Chapman. Heck, Gavin Admirand hasn't scored in this game, and he's your team's leading scorer with 50. Nice save in the net. Another stop by Trevor Coppy, who started well today. It hasn't necessarily just been him on an island not having to make saves. He's actually doing a really good job in the net for UMass Boston. He may not get a ton of the credit as the Beacons score again at the other end. Boy, we can't even keep track at this point. It's Patrick Carey who becomes the 8th Beacon goal scorer in 16 minutes. And this is, again, right back to the problem for Castleton. The root of the problem is really the face-off. False start in the circle, so that will give Castleton the ball. Finally got on the board with the score from Hunter Sorrow. But it has been a struggle throughout. They've gotten a couple penetrating looks, but we've seen when they have gotten the step on UMass Boston's defenders, they've put the shot wide, or we've had a couple really nice saves as well from Coppy in the goal. Beacons are up 11-1. Trevor Coppy actually has more saves than Castleton's goalie. He's got 7 of them. He's actually been lifted for Christian Meinhold, which we expected to happen. Meinhold and Coppy split a lot of time in the Beacon net. Meinhold, 325 minutes on the season. Copy entering 530. So, not surprising, very routine to see Meinhold and Copy split off at the quarter break. That's a gorgeous shot from up top. Really nice look. Got some space, and Cam Frankenhoff, the sophomore from Essex Junction, gets his first of the day. Whips it over the left shoulder, got some space, and even at this level, if you give any of these attackers a look, they are D3 lacrosse players for a reason. They can all shoot from the point if you give them the space to do so. Timeout is called. 11-2 UMass Boston. It has been goal scorer bingo throughout, as other than Banks' hat trick, single goals from Murphy, Carey, Claflin, Kidd, Fahey, and Colin Ford has 2. They are just spreading the wealth on offense, and when you look forward to the Little East Conference tournament next week, which starts on Tuesday, the Beacons will have the bye through the first round. Top 6 qualify, so the top 2 will get the bye. That's why the game between Western Connecticut and Keene State today so important for who may end up taking that second spot behind UMass Boston. But the Beacons are guaranteed to be the 1 seed, having beaten both of those teams in head-to-head. So even if they were to lose this game, it doesn't matter. But we do want to update you on what happened in that one, and it was Keene State who came out with a 14-11 victory over Western Connecticut. That game was played in Keene earlier today at 4 o'clock. So that means that Keene State will be the 2 seed because they take a 1-game lead over Western Connecticut, and because they have the head-to-head record going into the final game of the season, they cannot be surpassed. So UMass Boston will be the 1. Keene State will also have a bye and will be the 2 seed. Western Connecticut will fall to the 3, and they will host the 6 seed, who is yet to be determined. It could be basically anyone from Mass Maritime, East Con, Plymouth State, or even Castleton, depending on how things shake up in the final couple games of the season. Another score. Believe it was Luke Murphy who got his second. And it's so difficult to pick out the exact goal scorer. One, because they're coming at such immense regularity, but also with the rainy conditions and the bright lighting from the overheads on this dark night, making it difficult to pick out some of the numbers, but certainly appreciate the help I'm getting up here. MJ Murphy doing a great job spotting for me tonight. Beacons win another face-off. It all starts from there. Another one. Mention we'll probably hear Charlie Chapman's name at some point, and there it is. Chapman continues the goal-scoring bonanza for UMass Boston, the sophomore from down in Sandwich. Makes it 13-2. We are not even at the midpoint of the second quarter. And it's just so difficult for Castleton as Dobrzinski shoots this one forward. Everybody gets around the ball, but it somehow always seems to find a Beacon stick. And it is a true art form, as darting inside and looking for another one. This is McGonigal. He just puts this one off to the side. Trying to golf this one to a teammate. Gavin Admiran, who somehow hasn't joined the party today. Who would have thought 13 goals and Admiran doesn't have any of them? That one was tried to get swatted in from the ground. Elijah Beasley was looking to join the party as well. Once again, after all that scrum, it's nearly into a Beacon stick, but finally Castleton does come out of it. But the defenders and goalie down to our right have basically had nothing to do for quite a while, and now darting forward. Shot comes in. Well behind. Defenseman trying to whip one in. You have that longer stick, so it allows you to put more whip on the lacrosse ball. But again, even when they've gotten those openings, they just haven't been able to cash in. That time it was Luke Issa who tried to score, and just like that, we come back down the other end. Beasley got knocked off of his feet and turns it over. There have been spots in the game where Castleton has defended well and made UMass Boston work for about 2-3 minutes in between goals. They just haven't been able to win enough of the faceoffs and sustain any kind of possession numbers that make you feel like they can potentially make this game somewhat interesting. On the season, the Beacons, 181 turnovers. Castleton, yeah, you're going to have to brace yourself for this one. 359. So they have turned the ball over twice as much as UMass Boston in one less game. So they don't win enough faceoffs, and they have a tendency to be sloppy with the lacrosse ball. And I think the big one for me is teams have caused 146 turnovers on Castleton, which is a huge number. But that means over 200 turnovers are what I will call unforced errors. They're not being caused by the opposition. It's just not putting the ball in the right place. The pass is not connecting, turning the ball over and just not communicating. It's so difficult, and it ends up resulting in a 2-12 record when you don't win faceoffs and you turn over the ball. You can't score if you don't have the ball, and that certainly results in you not having it. Beacons will commit their second flaggable offense today, so send somebody to the box. Castleton will be man up for the next couple of minutes. In the sin bin will be number 25, Shane McGonigal. Final 5 minutes and 40 seconds of the second quarter. Beacons in full control. Trying to dart around and get the edge is Weller. To the right side, this is Dawson Nallette. Nice pass inside, and again, that's been an area they've been able to get to that spot. Just to the right of the goalkeeper from our vantage point up top, to the left of the goalie as he views it. But get to that right side, and they're really trying, maybe a little bit too hard, to go cross cage and pick out the far side, and they're missing it instead of trying to beat the goalie near side where they have a lot more goal to work with. When you have just an instant to react, sometimes you just got to fling it at the goalie. The goalie has a tendency to guess and want to move, but if you are so focused on picking out corner cage far side, you have much less margin for error. There's that spot again. That's where they've been getting it, and again they try and go corner on the far side, and that allows the goalie to cut down that angle. It was a nice move by Colin Johnson, but that side of the goal has not been Castleton's friend. Reverse pass, get inside, contact, ball knocked out of the stick, trying to force the turnover is Luke Issa. And he will. Eventually, Castleton does come up with it, but then another 50-50 ball is the ball knocked out of that defender's stick. Who can pick it up, flung high into the air, and it is going to be a man in green who comes out with it, but then loses it as well. Casey Messwar tried to escape traffic, couldn't do so. And there's another goal. Goalie tries to challenge, no luck, and Gavin Admirand is finally on the board. And once Castleton had turned that ball over a second time, they completely lost Admirand in behind. You usually watch in those 50-50 situations where everybody's scrumming aside the ball. If you're an astute watcher, watch the guy that isn't participating in it, because there's probably going to be an attacker that's just sitting behind the goal while everybody else battles for it. He's going to be sitting behind the goal, basically daring the defense to remember he's there. If they come away with it, okay, it's fine. You go back to the bench and get replaced by a midfielder. Otherwise, you sit there, and if your team comes out with it, you just step in front of the goalie, call for the ball, and you have a one-on-one. And that's exactly what Admirand did. Palin. Sent behind. Shot comes in. And it's saved this time. Beacons have changed up their goaltender, but not so for Castleton. It's still Chris Wilkin there, with Christian Meinhold in the other net on the opposite side of the field. Issa. Just getting it cleared out of the defense has been so difficult. That, again, it's just a lobbed ball, hoping to pick out a player in green. That's not going to do it. But the Spartans will get the ball back as this one was flicked out of bounds. You can see a little bit of frustration. That one was knocked out of bounds by Justin McCullough, who was our player to watch today, and he hasn't had a ton to do defensively, but will certainly be one of the keys to a potential defense of the Beacon Crown in the LEC. Mentioned that Tuesday afternoon, this coming Tuesday, so a week from today, will be the first round of the conference tournament. Nice save by Meinhold. Couple of saves in this second quarter for Christian. But the Beacons, after their final game of the regular season, before we do that, here's a shot. They try and go low. It's blocked on the shot attempt from Claflin, who's looking for his second. Picked up, scooted through, goes to the right of the net and behind. But next Thursday will be the start of the Little East Conference Tournament for your Beacons. They will have one last non-conference game against the Pilgrims of New England College. That'll be coming for you on Friday night here at 7 o'clock. So enjoy some Friday night lacrosse. And then next Thursday, the Beacons will be taking on either, well, we're not quite sure yet because we really don't know anything beyond the top three. That's why that number one spot is so important, because WestCon and Keene State who will get the bye, and WestCon who will be the 3-seeded host to semifinal matchup on Tuesday, those teams will have to face each other in the semifinal in all likelihood, which would mean the Beacons don't need to go through both, but only need to take on one of them to win a conference crown. Instead, you'd get the likes of Mass Maritime or potentially Eastern Connecticut State in your semifinal, which would make things a lot easier. Beacons beat Mass Maritime 20-9 and Eastern Connecticut State 22-6. In their last game, in a game, as I mentioned earlier, that they led 11-1 at one point. That was at halftime. They led 6-1 after one, and just as they did to Castleton today, shutting out the Warriors 5-0 in the second quarter. Third quarter was a little closer, 6-4, but then the Beacons would turn on the Jets again and leave no doubt in anyone's minds that they were the better team as they scored 5 in the fourth to win it 22-6. Gavin Admiran had 6 goals for the double hat trick. Claflin had 3, as did Banks McGonigal. And then Wolf had 2. Chapman, Murphy, Myers, Flynn, and Fahey all scored. Once again, up and down the lineup chart, there are players that can score for UMass Boston. And to boot, they did make 18 saves in net as well. So of the 24 shots on target that they faced, they saved 3/4 of them, which certainly bodes well and kind of draws your eye away from the outstanding offensive numbers toward what are really impressive defensive numbers. Nice shot, and another nice stop as this one gets sailed behind. Not sure if the goalie got any piece of the ball. It was Sorrow who tried to get in, and again, they get the step. That's what's been so frustrating in this first half for Castleton. They'd still be down probably about 7 goals, but there have been looks for Castleton to score, and they're just not able to finish them off. They're getting the steps there. Beacon defense, which has not had to do too much, is not necessarily at their best, as that is a gorgeous sidearm shot that goes in from Chris Labont, the junior from Essex Junction, Vermont. Minute 24 left in the opening half. Labont scores his first. That's his 28th of the season to lead all Castleton players. Next closest is the 18 that has been scored, now 19 with his one earlier by Hunter Sorrow. And Castleton able to get their third on the scoreboard, see if they can win this face-off and potentially go forward for a goal, but it just is not happening for them in the face-off circle. Not just tonight, but this season has been a mighty struggle for them. On the season, coming in, only winning 40% of the face-offs. 231 to 160, and that number has not gotten better tonight. Now, Dobrzinski is an excellent face-off man, one of the guys that's going to be key, particularly for any victory against Keene State or WestCon in a Little East Conference Championship game. Castleton just has not had an answer for him in the circle right now. Whipped through low. Under Armour. Greg Wolf darting around the inside, just wrapped around, had the ball flipped into his stick, and Castleton just can't stay with these Beacon offensive players right now. And it looks more like communication than athleticism, because the Beacons aren't necessarily doing anything too fancy either. They're just navigating the perimeter, and somebody's not communicating who's on who. Miller wins the face-off for the Spartans. 32 seconds to go in a half that has been all UMass Boston. 15-3. And if we remember from the last time, it was 30-6 the last time these two teams met. Well, if you double the score from first half to second, 30-6. But the Beacons would love to add a 16th before they get to halftime. Beasley, shot comes in high, and it's gloved there from the goalkeeper. And that should bring us to the end of the first half. Nice save to finish things off by Chris Wilk. Whistle sounds with 0.4 of a second, so the Beacons will just bring this back into play and let us go to halftime. Well, you can't ask for much better. Castleton undermanned on the day, and they are certainly the second-best team on this Tuesday night. The Beacons showing why they are the team to beat in the conference. Undefeated #1 seed already locked up in the conference tournament next week. And after 30 minutes of play here from James Cotter Field, they have a convincing lead, 15-3, over the Spartans. We'll pause for just a little bit, come back for second half action from James Cotter. The Beacons spreading the wealth offensively on their way to 8-0 in the LEC.
Don't want to feel like I'm being a jerk to Castleton, but my God, they're bad.
We return for a second half action here at James Cotter Field. UMass Boston on top of Castleton 15-3 after one half of play. Mason Stout with you on the Beacons Broadcast Network, part of the LEC Network. Final LEC game of the regular season for the Beacons, and they take the opening draw and try to launch one from the right side. That shot from Jack Ranta goes behind. Beacons will go for a couple of changes as they maintain possession. Hat tricks in the first half from Jacob Banks and Colin Ford. And then one goal apiece from Murphy, Adberand, Carey, Claflin, Mann, McNeely, Kidd, Wolf, and Fahey. As they just had a turnstile of goal scorers in the first half. Castleton one each from Labatt, Sorrow, and Frankenhoff. But it was really all about turnovers and the face-off circle, just sustaining all the momentum for UMass Boston and keeping Castleton from getting anywhere close. Shot comes in and is saved in the net. Still in the net for Castleton is number 21, Chris Wilk. The Beacons still have Meinhold as this one is turned over and scored by Liam Bowler. He joins this outstanding group of goal scorers at this point that just continues to grow. Bowler, just a sophomore from Spencer, Massachusetts. We'll definitely have a couple of players score in this game in all likelihood that we haven't seen much of this season, as the Beacons can certainly send some new guys out onto the field. Bowler, just his second goal of the season. Taken into the offensive zone again. There really hasn't been a lot of sustained offense for UMass Boston. By that, what I mean is the plays themselves have not been extremely long. Are they going to give a goal on that? I think they are. I think Castleton just fell asleep and completely did not realize that the ball was back in play. And if that is a goal, I believe it goes to Elijah Beasley, who also scores his first goal today. A stunned look on the face of Wilk. And I'm not sure if it's more stunned at the officiating crew or the fact that his entire team forgot that the game was still going on. Another face-off win for Dobbs, and right off of that, Matt Palin whips one from up high. By the end of this one, we could have a Beacon record for most goal scorers in a single game. It's becoming just astonishing how many different players have scored, and you definitely know that the coaches know that too. And you get into this very fun mode of, all right, we look down the line, who hasn't scored yet? Get in there, get us a goal. Beacons will certainly not take their foot off the gas pedal. Yes, it's a conference game, but there's also some pride at stake, and they want to get as many guys in there on the action as possible. The one thing that I will say in a game like this is that the Beacons have to make sure that they maintain their discipline. Don't commit any silly fouls. Don't completely just start flinging the ball around willy-nilly and losing what has made you so strong all season long. You cannot do that between now and Friday either against New England College. Nice save by Meinhold. Karam is back to the right side. And I don't expect the Beacons to let their foot up at all, but you just want to make sure that you're still running your sets, making the defense work. You can't necessarily just take a week and a half off between now and your Little East Conference semifinal. You got to make sure that you are crisp and moving and getting everybody involved in the action as you would against a much stronger team than Castleton. You take what you're given. You obviously want to keep scoring, but you want to make sure that you don't just start flinging around like this is an all-star game and you're not actually trying to work on things. There's still a lot that you can work on in an 18-3 game. Like a set right here. Defense has been strong today. Haven't talked about them in much. They certainly haven't had nearly as many shots on their goal, but they have really made Castleton work so hard. Castleton player goes down and he is hurt. Not sure if it was even a contact injury, and usually when that happens, it's the last thing you want to see. Whipping off his equipment in pain, Colin Johnson, the senior from northern Vermont and South Burlington. And he will be visited by the training staff. And this is, of course, the last thing you want to see in any game, especially in a game like this. Castleton already down a number of players due to illness. And now Colin Johnson down in tremendous pain. Johnson, 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points this season. And as soon as he planted, again, he was under pressure, but I did not see a significant amount of contact between he and the defender. And what I just am afraid might have happened is he plants, and you see that happen both on grass and turf. You plant wrong and the knee. There are certainly things that end in CL in there that you don't want to think about. But he was immediately on the ground and tearing off his equipment, and he is going to have to be lifted up and carried off the field, and that is, as the Beacon fans applaud him, the last thing you want to see. Cannot put any pressure on his right leg right now. So that is certainly a dark moment in a game that has been filled with bright moments for UMass Boston. But that will certainly leave a dark cloud over the remainder of this contest, and we certainly wish the best to Colin. His senior season just wants to go out healthy. That's all you really want. Don't expect him to return today. We just hope that it's not what you always fear it is with those non-contact injuries that you can't put contact on the leg. That's seen too many of those. And you always fear the worst, and you hope it isn't. But we're back underway. Cam Frankenhoff, one of 3 goal scorers for the Spartans today. Castleton in the away green jerseys, white helmets, white numbers on the back with Spartans across the chest. The Beacons in their home whites today with the blues. Blue numbers, as they would have been a shot clock violation if not taken back by the Beacons first. Streaking away from danger and moving forward is McCulloch. He will stay in the attack. And a gorgeous pass. And another beautiful finish by the Beacons. Believe it was McGonigal potentially. We'll get the exact number on that one. Usually the player that scores leads the pack out. Was McGonigal, but not quite sure. It's Banks. Banks from Beasley. McGonigal in there, the freshman midfielder, but Banks gets his 4th. So 4 for him, 3 for Ford, and then everybody else in the group with 1. And they just keep on coming. It is just becoming a real nightmare. Oh, it has been a real nightmare in the face-off circle for Castleton. Colin Ford says, I see you, Jacob Banks, with your 4th. Let me get my 4th just mere seconds later, just 13 seconds separating the goals between Banks and Ford, so they now both have 4. It'll be interesting to see who wins the day in the end. Dobrzinski has been replaced in the face-off circle, but same result from Jason McNeely, who goes forward. That ball caroms away, picked up, and now venturing forward is Patrick McCoy. McCoy hasn't scored, faces up, throws it in, tries to get the assist on that one, but unable to finish that time was McNeely. Castleton the other way, and they turn it over again. Turnovers and face-offs win you lacrosse games, or should I say lose you lacrosse games if you can't win those battles. Beacons send a substitute attacker in there as the defenseman heads back to his zone. Jack Ranta taken back and in the stick of Castleton's Chris Wilk. 5 minutes gone in the second half. Beacons have added 5 more goals, and Castleton, I think, maybe managing one shot in this third quarter. They have been just overwhelmed by the Beacons. But what probably hurts the most for Castleton fans as they watch this game is that UMass Boston really hasn't done anything overly complicated. Are they supremely talented? Yes. But Castleton has thrown the ball away far too regularly when they've gotten inside and gotten a step on the Beacon attack, on the Beacon defenders, and they've had goal to aim at. They really haven't forced the goalie to make too many saves over the last 2 quarters. They've just missed the goal wide as they do there again. You got to put the shot on target and make the Beacon netminder Meinhold make a save. We had 7 saves early from the Beacon starter, but Trevor Coppy was quiet basically for the second half of it, quarter number 1. Then Meinhold came in and he hasn't had to do much. He's moved around in his cage, but most of the shots have been off target. This one, again, trying to pick out that far corner. That has been Castleton's goal all day, and it hasn't worked. They have been trying so hard to make the goalie go across his cage and get it side netting far corner instead of just really throwing one down the throat. And if it's saved, it's saved, but you got to force the goalie to make the stop. Had the player running through the middle, Chris Labonte called for it, and the pass went wide, and after all of that, a turnover gives it back to UMass Boston. Launching himself forward is Claflin. The shot comes in. Wilkes saves it. Quickly, Castleton tries to come the other way. Pressure being applied defensively. Castleton will get the defensive clearance. Spartans wheel around. They really haven't used the back of the cage at all either. Shot comes in, blocked. That was the defender who got a touch on it as Ty Bowen tried to score. But really no follow-up there either for the Spartans. Beasley back into the attack. This ball goes out of bounds on the opposite side of the field. Castleton will take it back. Things have mucked up a little bit over the last couple of minutes, as you would expect in a 20-3 game. Again, really want UMass Boston to be as clinical as they can. But there is an element of, well, when the opposite team is severely undermanned, both on field and off, it is just so difficult to be at your best the full 60 minutes, and they have been about as close to at their best throughout the game as possible. But they certainly know, the Beacons do, that this is not what the teams in the Little East Conference tournament are going to give against them. Another score. This time it's going to be Chris Palin. Thought it was Palin. The 1 and the 8 of Admiran look eerily similar, but it makes more sense. Palin helped back in the defensive zone, and Gavin Admiran gets his 52nd of the season. One more, and he will hit the 80-point club. Long battle for the face-off. Taking a tumble is Dobrzynski. And Castleton does get the ball. They're limited fans in attendance. Happy with that. Any face-off win feels like a little bit of a sigh of relief for the Spartans right now. Labonte trying to go one-on-one. He was battling there with Robert Sprague, number 43 in white. And again, it's thrown away, and it's just not nearly enough penetration by Castleton. You get the feeling Labonte feeling a little selfish, saying, I just got to do it myself, which is not a recipe for success. Castleton just having difficulty completing 2-3 passes in a row, and the Beacon defenders are good, but they're not putting them under so much pressure. They're just sitting back, and Castleton is almost looking at UMass Boston and playing what the defender that they think is there, even though the defenders might be slacking off a little bit, just waiting for Castleton to commit the unforced error, and it's just been hard to watch at times for the Spartans tonight. This one tried to go cross cage. Long whipped effort from Charlie Chapman, who we thought had a goal in the first half, but that was actually a goal for Jason McNeely, the transfer from Division II Coker. So Chapman not on the board yet, but still plenty of time for that. That's much better defensively. You can use that body contact to your advantage, and even though Mick Flynn was able to get the step, he was then bodied off the ball. Castleton takes it back, fresh 80 for them. Still looking for their first goal of the second half. It took basically 19 minutes for them to score their first, and now they have been shut down again. Castleton has also changed their goalie. Miles French is in net for Castleton now. Number 36, the 6'2", 270-pound junior from South Burlington, Vermont. So big, imposing presence in the cage. Tough to find slots around the body. But he is in there for the second goalie of the day, so no more Chris Wilk. For Miles French on the season, this is his 5th game, but only 20 minutes so far. Has saved 4 goals and allowed 5. Castleton has a player sent to the penalty box. It's Ty Bowen, the left-sided midfielder from Schuylerville, New York. And so the Beacons will have a fresh shot clock and a man-up advantage. This is one thing that Castleton hasn't had today, is a man in the penalty box. Nice save in the net by French. You might look at that frame and think, how quick can he move? But you have got to be extremely agile as a goalkeeper in lacrosse. And so he's got to get that big 270-pound frame and move the stick, and did a really nice job. It was hit to him, but adjusted his stick, made the stop in front of him, and now has to direct traffic as the Beacons come right back into the attack. 1-2 punch, and another score. Beautiful pass is Greg Wolf, who's really hasn't necessarily been involved a ton in the attack, as the Beacons have just spreaded the wealth so effectively. But Greg Wolf has made 2 gorgeous cuts on either end of the field. Just comes out of nowhere. And when I say nowhere, I mean he's coming in from the bench. The Beacons have used that with tremendous effect. They will flip the defensive-minded midfielder for the offensive, attack-minded midfielder. And if Castleton doesn't pick the guy up that's streaking in from the 50-yard line, well, you get a play like that where short corner, near side, everybody's, Castleton's faces turned toward the ball. You have 3 eyes on the ball, no one watching the guy coming in behind the play, and it's Wolf there for another score. Beacons 7 in the second half so far. Castleton still nothing doing. 22-3 as UMass Boston tries to cap their Little East Conference regular season with a statement victory. Castleton, who really has played their best 2 games of the season in their last 2 games. The loss against Plymouth State, where they led at halftime 6-1, or should I say 6-4, led throughout, and then Plymouth State just was able to take over in the fourth quarter and shut down Castleton offensively. It ended up being just a 10-7 scoreline. And then last game, Southern Maine had no answer for Castleton through three. It was 10-3 after three quarters. Now, Southern Maine made it much more interesting in the fourth, outscoring Castleton 7-2 to make it a 12-10 final. But as the Beacons score their 23rd of the day, Castleton was coming in with the slightest bit of momentum. Now, that was largely wiped out of here by the illness that has stricken a large number of their team. And so they're significantly undermanned today as Shane McGonigal does score. We were waiting for him. He's been involved in a number of attacks, and the freshman from Haverhill, Mass. is on the scoreboard as well as we continue to go up and down the line of Beacon goal scorers, and just about anyone who has had an opportunity to score has scored. We still have another 18 minutes, nearly 19 to play, as it has just been a nightmare of an evening for the team from Vermont. French commanding his team to go forward, nearly throws it away, but now streaking past the midfield and into the attack. He is Issa. Meswar. Skip pass to the other side. Castleton just needs to move the ball a little bit more. You're not going to be able to beat the Beacons in the man-to-man. They help off too well. One thing I mentioned that I really think Castleton needs to do more is use the back of the cage. Right now, everything's happening in front of the goalie. He's watching everything. Everything's happening. They do score there, though. Finally getting on the board in the second quarter, or second half. Ty Bowen scoring for the Spartans. His first of the day, the sophomore from Schuylerville, New York. Gets Castleton on the board in the third quarter. For Bowen, that's his first goal of the season. But we expected, with Castleton down a number of guys. Actually, that one's Frankenhoff. Saw the 4, but there was a second 4 alongside of it. So not Bowen, just the second of the day for Frankenhoff, however, who's now the first multi-goal scorer for Castleton. Really nice stop by French. Talk about getting that body down to the ground to make the stop. Really liked what I've seen. He's also been really vocal back there. Playing in just his 5th game of the season, trying to get his team a little bit of energy, commanding in front of his net. Like what I've seen from the backup goalie for the Spartans in limited action in this third quarter. 23-4. Beacon faithful still staying out here late into the night as this one finds its way into the back of the net. Beating the goalie near side. Something Castleton probably has needed to do for a while. That's the shot. You get past your defender, get him on your right shoulder on that left side of the net, and there's nothing too fancy about it. Goes low on the bigger goaltender. But for the most part, that's just near side and low. And most importantly, it's on target as Chad Kidd scores his second of the day. Kidd now multi-goal scorer. And it's just been attack, attack, attack for the Beacons. These long runs just exacerbated by the face-off victories that the Beacons are able to get time and time again. The Beacons have won 24 of 31 face-offs against the Spartans tonight. Castleton turning it over 23 times on 15 caused turnovers by the Beacons, and they're being outshot 62-36. Beacons also very unselfish, 17 assists on their 24 goals. 24-4 as we get inside the final 2 minutes of the quarter. Can Castleton just get a stop and one last score before this third quarter ends, or will the Beacons just continue to pummel them in these quarter field areas? That one sailed high, tried to feed it in there from Max Ranta, true freshman. Beacons don't have a lot of true freshmen on their team at all. Ranta, one of the only ones. Shane McGonigal is a first-year. Simon Poro, the 6'7", 205-pounder from Dallas, is a freshman, as another goal goes in for UMass Boston. And then Sean Cullen and Ethan Twombly. Everybody else, sophomore or above, as the Beacons are so veteran-heavy, looking to carry them to back-to-back Little East Conference titles. And last year, of course, big celebration, certainly a legitimate championship, but they would love to have one without COVID playing a central role. Owen Gallagher, the junior midfielder from Worcester, responsible for that last goal on a nice little pass through the middle. And getting in close and scoring is Gallagher. For Owen, that's his third of the season, who's playing in just his 7th game. Final 58 seconds of the quarter. Beacons outscoring Castleton 10-1 in the third. If you're wondering what the Beacons' highest scoring game was this season, they beat Salem State 30-9 back on April 2nd. So they are certainly threatening to bash down the 30-goal threshold for the second time this season. Castleton had it very briefly, but it's turned back over again. Pinpoint pass up into the midfield as it's taken under control by Sprague. Sprague, with that long defenseman stick, heads back into the defensive zone as this one has come in and Chapman tried to whip one over his left shoulder. Escapes in behind, taken by Max Ranta with 16.6 to play. Ranta matched up defensively with Ryan Palmisano. That ball is dropped, and Castleton has it back with their goalie. 4 seconds to go in the quarter, and this should do it for the first 45 minutes of play from Boston this evening. We still have 15 more minutes to go. UMass Boston, of course, could not overlook Castleton, and they have not. They have poured it on, 10 more goals added in the third quarter, and when we go through the goalie summary in just a second, it is an astonishing tally of different personnel who have gone in there and shown that they can score when called upon. Everything leading the way right now is Jacob Banks and Colin Ford. Both have 4 goals. Chad Kidd and Greg Wolf both have 2, as does Gavin Admirand. But then here is the list of goal scorers with 1 each. Luke Murphy, Matt Palin, Elijah Beasley, Liam Bowler, Patrick Carey, Owen Gallagher, Michael Claflin, Shane McGonigal, Zach Mann, Jason McNeely, and Dara Fahey. Haven't even need much of Fahey. Played probably the first few minutes and really haven't needed him since, as the Beacons are able to rest their big guns. They do have one more regular season game coming up on Friday, out of conference against New England College. That one will be right here at 7 o'clock. So the Beacons, with 15 more minutes to go, will finish the regular season in conference with a 5-0 record. Took care of their business in their previous conference games. I should say it'll be 6-0 because you play 6 conference games. But defeated Salem State 30-9 in their conference opener. Plymouth State fell 19-7. Mass Maritime 20-9. Southern Maine 21-9. WestCon 23-14. Eastern Connecticut State 22-6. And the one close one, and the one that is potentially the one that we look forward to as a potential Little East Conference championship game, The Keene State Owls coming here to James Conner and falling 14-13 in what was the first regular season conference loss for Keene State since April 20th, 2004. They have lost conference championship games to Eastern Connecticut. They had lost in the semifinal last year to WestCon, but they had not lost a conference regular season game in nearly 18 years before they lost here to your Beacons. And so there is going to be some bad blood and some unfinished business should those two teams meet in what would be a 1-2 matchup in the conference championship game. Western Connecticut fell at Keene State earlier today, 14-11, in their final games. So they each have one conference game left to play. However, with the win, Keene State gets one up on on WestCon, and because they would have the tiebreaker with the head-to-head record, even if they were to lose their final game and WestCon were to win, Keene State will be the number 2 seed in the Little East Conference tournament and get the second bye. Whipped from up high, and a beautiful shot and score. First one of the quarter will be bagged by Chris Labont. Second of the day for Chris. When Castleton's had space at the point, which has been very infrequent, Beacons have done a really good job shepherding them to the sides where they've had tremendous difficulty scoring from tough angles. But when they've left a couple of guys at the top of this crease, 20-25 yards, or on the line, 20-25 yard line, about 15-20 from goal, they've had some good looks, have the Spartans, and they've cashed in on a couple of them. Not nearly enough to be competitive in the game, but still, nice to see them score the first goal of this fourth quarter, making it 25-5. Jason McNeely in the face-off circle, taking on number 17 in green, Finn Miller. And McNeely comes up with the lacrosse ball. Twombly heads off to be substituted. Beacons getting more attack-minded players in there once again. Chad Kidd with his second goal of the day earlier, looking for a hat trick, has possession of the ball. Gives it up to Charlie Chapman. Beacons starting from way up near midfield. Putting the pressure on defensively is Matt Mumford, the defenseman from Rutland, Vermont, local to the Castleton area. Long circle around Chapman. Thought about it. Now we'll give it up to the stick of Bowler. Liam cradles. Not being put under tremendous pressure. Now a little bit of defensive attack being applied by Liam Lovering. 24 seconds left, and the Beacons are slowing things down. Now they will begin with Chapman. Spins, leaves the defender in the dust. Shot comes in well off to the left. Beacons will be able to back up the play and retake possession, but with just 14 seconds to shoot. Chapman sent back out for a sub. Taken behind, and the whistle sends us back into play. Spinning and trying to gain the zone, trying to look for the crease is Gallagher, who scored once today, tries to shoot this one, sprays wide all the way to the other end of the field. Beacons with just 2 seconds to shoot, even if they're closest, but it should go to Castleton, and it will. Spartans with the only goal of the fourth quarter, but this game well in hand by your UMass Boston Beacons on this late Tuesday evening. You're watching the Beacon Broadcast Network, part of the LEC Network with Mason Stauff on this Tuesday night. Beacons putting a final stamp on their conference regular season slate, taking on a Castleton team that has looked overmatched tonight. Dancing through traffic is A.J. Rinaldi, the defenseman from Wellesley, Mass, down the road, getting some spot opportunities to play. Always great. As much as these aren't competitive games, they're lots of fun to call because you get to hear names and say names that you don't get a lot of chance to do during most of the season. Matt Palin nearly left the defender in the dust as he lost his footing. Now getting inside and trying to finish. Getting knocked off of his feet was Ranta. Taken back. Really like what I've seen from the goalie. He's been patrolling his crease extremely well, Miles French, in relief of Chris Wilk. Now it's with Luke Issa, who gives it up, heads back to the defensive zone. Beacons have failed to score for the last 4 minutes of this quarter. And Castleton, for the first time, really looking like they're on equal footing with UMass Boston as the Beacons have sent in some substitutions. And Castleton just trying to save face a little bit. The Beacons have also switched up their goalie. It's Otto Kirlis, who's in the cage right now. The sophomore from right here in Boston. Attended Boston Latin School, getting the fourth quarter after Meinhold got quarters 2 and 3, and Copy started things off with a strong first. Bringing this back into play will be Palin. Sends it into the middle of the park. Pass through, nearly flicked on. It's beautiful set play initially and almost had the touch to direct it into the back of the net. That would have been a filthy goal to be scored by Elijah Beasley. Final 10 minutes. Beacons will improve to 8-0 in the Little East Conference. And they will run the table. Upper 90 shot. Finds its way into the back of the net. Gorgeous finish. As Castleton scored their first 2 of the fourth. That goal was scored by Sean Kimura, who wasn't supposed to play in this game. But as soon as I saw the 15, I immediately wondered, is that Sean? And it is. Unless he's shrugged his number 15 jersey and given it to somebody else. He was crossed off on our roster when we got it. But the Montreal, Quebec native scores for Castleton's 6th of the day and 2nd of this quarter. But that can't happen. They completely lose Liam Bowler on this near side, and all he had to do was step in and beat the goalie who had no chance. Bowler has his 2nd, the sophomore from Spencer. Beacons continue to pour it on, and they get their first goal of this fourth quarter. Took them 6 minutes to do so as Castleton has locked things up as much as they can defensively. Beacons getting some new faces in there, and for the most part, trying not to overly pressure Castleton. They still want to get those guys on the score sheet, but for the most part, don't need to be as aggressive as you were in the early going. Face-off foul committed by the Spartans, so the Beacons will have it back as we approach the midpoint of the final quarter. Played in behind. This one escapes all the way to the outside. Picked up at the point by Bowler. Plays it to the left, and McGonigal, who has 1 today. Chapman still looking for his goal. Beacons send a couple of players in motion through the middle. Shot comes in, or what should I say, a brilliant pass to McGonigal. What a look. Looked like a shot, but just perfectly picking out the run of McGonigal on the near post. Cross pass. Gorgeously done. And the Beacons have goal number 27. Liam Bowler, what a look. And we talk about all the different goal scorers, but all these goals are pretty much all resulting in assists as well for this Beacon team as they've been so unselfish tonight. Gavin Admirand leading the way with 4 helpers on the day. So with his 2 goals and 4 assists, he's now at 83 points this season for UMass Boston is over the course of the final game against New England College and into the conference tournament. He's looking to break down the 100-point threshold. But also getting assists, 2 from Przinski, who didn't score today but still getting points. 3 from Claflin to go along with his goals Dobrzinski streaking forward from the face-off circle to get involved in the play. He had 3 assists today. Came in the day with just 4 helpers on the year and added 3 of them today. But then also assists from McCoy, Ford, Carey, Bowler, Beasley, Myers, Murphy, and Palin. Goal number 28 finding its way into the back of the net, as this time it's Mick Flynn, the junior from Bellingham, Mass. It's just relentless. And you can't tell the Beacons to stop scoring. They're just moving the ball around and finding the openings, and Castleton would certainly... They don't want the Beacons to just stop scoring on them. If anything, that's more disheartening. You never want a team to give up against you. It's the ultimate sign of almost disrespect. Now, you don't want them to abuse it, but you also don't want them to not play. And certainly both guys, or both sets of teams, know that they have guys out and on the field who are playing in what is just their probably a handful of games all year for limited minutes. So they want to get their moment. They want to show what their coach can do. And so that's the glorious part about these games, is that you see guys that may play bigger roles next year, or maybe earn themselves a couple of extra minutes in a conference tournament game if somebody goes down with an injury or somebody picks up a card in some way. So you want to see what these guys out there can do, and I've been impressed by this man right there, Bowler, with that beautiful pass. Final 6.5. Beacons knocking on the door of their second 30-goal output this season, which they had against Salem State. They've actually had 20 goals or more in 4 of their last 5. And so it is now 5 out of 6 that they've reached 20. The most goals that Castleton has surrendered this season was 25 before this one. They lost against WestCon 25-6, as the Beacons will commit the shot clock violation. 80 seconds elapse on the shot clock and turn back over to the men in green. But for Castleton, this will drop them to 2-5 in conference. And it will be an uphill climb for them to try and get into the 6th spot. Play made behind the net. Otto Kierlis picks up the ball and moves it toward the midfield, where it's picked up by McGonigal. After this, Castleton will return home for their final game of the season on Friday night. They also have a nighttime 7 o'clock matchup, and they will take on the Buccaneers of Mass Maritime, or, of course, associate members of the Little East Conference for men's lacrosse. So a 7 o'clock game against the team that's currently sitting in 4th in the LEC. Kierlis makes the stop, gets it into his possession, and now circling the goal with 4:30 left. We continue to coast toward the finish here in Boston. This one was out of reach early, and the Beacons never looked back from there. Mass Maritime was facing Salem State at 7 o'clock. That one has just gone final as the Buccaneers take down the Vikings 25-13. And so with that, Mass Maritime finishes their regular season at 4-3. And they will have the 4 seed in the conference tournament. The only thing that could affect that, not sure what Mass Maritime did against Eastern Connecticut. But if Mass Maritime were to beat Castleton on Friday, they would assure themselves of that 4 seed and would lock up a home game against what would likely be East Con in the conference tournament. Plymouth State beat Southern Maine 15-9. So Plymouth State goes from 2-4 to 3-4. And with this loss to UMass Boston, Castleton with 1 game to go will officially be eliminated from conference tournament contention. So we know the 6. It's going to be UMass Boston number 1, Keene State 2, West Con 3. And then it's just a question of whether it's Mass Maritime 4. A win over Castleton would guarantee that for them. Eastern Connecticut 5 and Plymouth State 6. But it will be some combination of Buccaneers, Warriors, and Panthers for the final 3 spots. If you're looking forward to Friday, East Con will travel to Southern Maine. Plymouth State will be against Keene. West Con will face Salem State. New England College, in an out-of-conference game, will come here to face your Beacons, and Mass Maritime will play Castleton. Final 2:15. Beacons 28, Spartan 6. Tough angle shot scored by Connor Ryder, senior member of this Castleton team from Whitby, Ontario, stands 6'6", 225. And he gets on the board as Castleton has certainly fought in this 4th quarter. The scoreline will certainly not be flattering in the end, but cannot say that they did not play hard to the end. And with that, Castleton takes the draw. Launching that shot, Finn Miller, but it's denied by Kirlis. Final 2 minutes to go. It's been a pleasure bringing you Beacon Lacrosse. For those of you who have stuck around for the entirety of this 28-7 game, thank you. Especially as we get past 9:30 at night, or approach 9:30 at night here in Boston. So a late one, but still one that has been extremely enjoyable for the Beacon faithful, particularly for those of you who are friends and families of some of the spot players who have gotten a chance to shine tonight. And hopefully we've done a good job of bringing you those names, as many as there were, as the Beacons have just dominated from the outset. Bowler has it behind the net. Played up top. McGonigal looking for a hat trick potentially in the late going as we tick inside of a minute here at James Cotter Field. One last drive from Colin Ford, who is tied for the most Beacon goals today. He had 4, as did Jacob Banks. One last shot clock violation as Castleton will take it back and have what should be the last possession of the game. But it has been all Beacons throughout. Castleton competing in this 4th quarter, but at that point well out of reach. Beacons end up outshooting Castleton by a ridiculous 75-44. And just did not let up at any point. They end up taking 31 of 39 face-offs to just exacerbate how much they dominated the game. Castleton turning it over 26 times compared to the Beacons' 20. Castleton ended up 0 for 4 on the man-up look. They do get one last goal. Score from Cam Frankenhoff, and so he gets a hat trick. Only Castleton player who will get that today, so certainly something despite the scoreline, to take pleasure from Frankenhoff, getting his 10th, 11th, and 12th goals of the day, or of the season, I should say, third goal of the day, as Castleton looks like it will finish this game 28-8. They actually will outscore the Beacons in the fourth quarter, so hey, they won a quarter. And if there's bright spots to take from Castleton, they did not back down. They fought through the end, but in the end, their fight was not enough as the Beacons dominate the Spartans on this Tuesday night. They win it by a score of 28-8. Beacons wrap up conference play 8-0. Nobody can top the Beacons in the regular season, and now they get to look forward to one last regular season game Friday against New England College before we will play a semifinal game here at James Cotter Field. And as long as they win that one, the Little East Conference Championship will be hosted by UMass Boston the following Saturday. Castleton falls to 2-13 on the season, dropped to 2-5 in conference, and with Plymouth State's win against Southern Maine, Castleton officially eliminated from LEC tournament contention. Well, we could go up and down the order and list out all the goal scorers again, but we invite you to go to beaconsathletics.com to check that out. It would take me 5 minutes to go through it all, but Banks and Ford each have 4. Get all the goalies in, everybody getting some minutes, and at the end of the day, a pretty nice evening for Beacon Lacrosse. With that, we bring an end to this broadcast. We thank our outstanding crew off to my right, basically what feels like the entire Beacon women's soccer team, out here showing up on this rainy Tuesday night. They've played in many of these conditions, and now they come out to put on a great broadcast as well. But for everybody here at UMass Boston, my name is Mason Stouff saying good night from this Tuesday evening from Boston. Your final score, once again, your Beacons 28 and the Castleton Spartans 8. Have a good one.